Okay, hi everybody. My name is Johan Eriksson, and I'm going to try and make a patch in the modular synth environment Automatonism, which I created within Pure Data. Usually what I start off with is making an irregular clock pattern. I think it's important to take advantage of the modular environment and not restrain ourselves to a linear timeline kind of thinking with a fixed tempo or a BPM. So I want to set up a really irregular clock, and while we could use a random gates module for that kind of randomness tends to sound a bit predictable to me after a while. So what I like to do is to set up a feedback network using LFOs instead, and that way we get much more variations in our clock material. So usually I do something like this, and to do the feedback loop in Pure Data we need to use a send and receive object and just call it send fback. Fback is just a variable, you can call it whatever you like, and then I'm going to put it through a VCA so we can control the amount of feedback, and then into the frequency input of the first LFO. If we create an output speaker, we can listen to the clicks of the LFOs now. Okay. And this is kind of what I'm looking for. Changes in tempo, short bursts, really quick bursts, and then slower ones, and this is going to be a good starting point as a clock source for me. So now what we can do with that one is we can trigger sounds. We can trigger a kick drum like this. See what that sounds like. Okay, great. I do think that the immediate source is going to be a bit too quick for me for the kick drum, so let's put a clock divider in between like that and have it by the divided by 2 output. Oops, sorry, wrong inlet. There we go. So that's kind of what I'm looking for the kick drum, I guess. So it's important when you're making larger, more complex patches to give yourself options from the beginning, so you don't have to go back and try to find stuff in your patch. So what I like to do is I like to put in switches. Oops, 1 to 4 switch. Actually, let's use this one, 4 to 1 switch. So if we do it like this and patch the clock source in there you go. On channel 1 we have this one, but let's say at a later stage we want to be able to switch between various clock sources. So we want a fixed source on occasion, and channel 2 is now this fixed tempo drum beat, and channel 1 is our irregular feedback network. So that's a good option to have later on in the patch. I'm going to name that clock switch just for reference. And also at a later stage I want to be able to turn the kick on and off. That's usually how I create my patches. I create some musical gestures, and then I have them being switchable and set up a random probability logic system that will turn these musical gestures on and off. So to be able to do that on a later stage, we need another switch in here that we can use later on, and I'll put it there. So now channel 1 is the kick making sounds, and channel 2 is no kick at all. So this is going to be called kick switch. Okay, cool, there we go. For the kick drum, for the sound of a kick drum, I want to beef it up a little bit with a compressor. Put it there. And also some parallel processing with a short room reverb is nice. Gives it a bit more real sound. I'll still keep it in mono though. Cool, something like that. Now we can also use the the outputs from our various LFOs to modulate pitches on the kick drum. So maybe I don't really like that because I don't like the pitches to vary that much, but something like that's more to my liking. And if I modulate to decay, maybe with this one. Yeah, maybe not that one either. So that. Okay, something like that. Okay, let's add another musical gesture. Let's add like a bass drone or a noisy bass drone. I'm going to use the Trigons oscillator, full of harmonics and can be quite gnarly. And if you combine it with an overdrive module, it can get really nasty. Also going to use a lot of reverb for this one. Oops, that was busy. You can see that I'm typing. You don't have to use the module list in Automatonism. You can do that, but it's quicker to just type the name of the modules and then space and a numerical number to make them unique for state saving. Okay, let's see what we got here. Yes, so again, I'm going to use the modulation sources that we have to get some changes in the timbre. Okay, nice. Okay, what I like to do here is I'll put a few VCAs after the reverbs so that I can sidechain the entire reverb sound. I really like that kind of sound. I think it sounds quite unnatural, which I think is a good fit in this kind of music. So to sidechain, we need to use the envelope follower module and patch the kick signal into that one and use the inverted amplitude output so that polarity is inverted, so every time the kick sounds, it's going to kill the sound of this drone here. So something like this. Yeah, okay. I don't really like that one. There we go. Tweak some parameters till you're happy, somewhere around there. So I'm gonna add a sequencer to change the pitches of the drone, so it becomes less of a drone and more of a melody, I guess. So there we go. Add another oscillator and use to do some kind of FM modulation. Okay, cool. But I want to do that dynamically, so let's add another VCA in between. There we go, and then modulate that VCA with something from over here. Nice. Go. So to be able to turn this drone on and off, we need a switch again here in between the mixer and these VCAs. So switch. Then back into the to that put. This is our drone switch, or actually drone switches. Okay. Great. So now I'll add some card clips. synthesis sounds to this, some more high-pitched sounds. Let's put a carpless module through a module called Starlight, which is basically an experimental pitch delay module, reverse delay and some reverb. And we'll need another output mixer. It's a stereo module, so hard pan left and right. And I'm gonna use a random gates module here and have the carpless module being triggered from a completely different clock source than the one that we set up first. I like to do these kind of things. I think it's important not to, well, it's important to give life to your patches, and using completely unrelatable clock sources is helpful for that if you're looking for a wild and sort of crazy sound. There we go. So now we have the carpless going on. We need some different pitches for that, so I'll do that with some random voltages. So clock those and put them through a quantizer, also using the Phrygian scale and into the pitch, and there we go. So to be able to turn this one on and off at a later stage, we need a switch as well. And let's call that carpless switch. Cool. Okay, so all the sounds at the moment are really irregular and quite without a straight pulse. So as a contrast, let's add a fixed pulse sound, maybe an acid bass line or something that's more rigid in its tempo. We can use the percussion module for this. I kind of like to use it for more FM-y acid bass sounds because it's a 3-operator FM module, so it can do all those kind of things. Let's use this fixed clock LFO we already have up here. You know, patch it into the module, and if we listen to the channel, there we go, and modulate the pitches. Maybe that's too wide of a, okay, maybe. And then modulate the FM index. Yeah, something like that. Also could do with some reverb. I'll add a vintage verb module. It's stereo, so hard pan it. Okay. Again, to be able to turn it off, let's add a switch in between. Give it a name. Acid switch. Okay, and let's add some more percussion, maybe a hi-hat and a snare. For the hi-hat, I like to create a sort of, well, I like to use a clock multiplier to create a trap sounding hi-hat. So to do that, we need a divider and then a clock multiplier. Yes. Go. And some random voltages. Modulate the multiplier. Let's see what we got. We need another output mixer. Okay, yeah, something like that. That's cool. Again, we need a switch there to be able to turn it off. This is our hi-hat switch. We can use the same switch for the snare. And let's add a different divider with odd outputs just to mix it up. Use divided by 7. Yeah, that's nice. Put the snare through a granular delay. Oh, come on. Okay, let's turn some things on and off. Okay, what I'm going to do now, instead of me clicking these switches, we're going to set up a random probability mechanism that does this for us to create more life into the patch, and being able to have an interesting self-playing patch that sounds complex enough on the structural macro level. So let's turn things on again. And we're going to add a module called the Random Time Manager. You'll find it here under Macro Structural Tools. And so with this one, we can create a trigger output randomly between set times. So we can set a minimum time of, like, let's say I want the minimum time for it to happen to be 5 seconds and the maximum 15 seconds. And then we get a trigger output here, and we're going to use a probability module to make it a 50% chance that the trigger will pass, and then send it to our switches. So send this to kick. Kick is up here. And these are the switches that we made in the beginning. There we go. And then we need a switch for the drone. Send the drone. The drone is up here somewhere. Yeah. Drone. And that's a stereo, so it will be 2 switches like that. Then we had carpless. Carpless sound. Go change the name to carpless. Where is it? Up here. Receive. Bear with me, this is kind of boring, but soon we'll be done. There will be the acid switch, and it is up. No, it's down here. Acid. finally the hi-hat and snare. HH for hi-hat and into the switch. Okay, good. As you might have noticed, the random time manager is not outputting any triggers at the moment, and that's because we haven't put a sync source into it at the top left. I made it like this so it wouldn't just count a number and then just perform the action. I want it to perform the action in sync with your patch. So you need to put some kind of clock source into the sync output, and then it will count to the number, and then wait until it gets a trigger input at the sync source, then perform the action, and that way it will all be in sync with your patch. And so let's use this random gates module, call it sync, and send it into the random time manager. And hopefully now it'll start outputting triggers and yeah. And turn things on and off randomly. And now again. Right, so this way now we get some variation to the patch. It's important for me to listen to the patch a lot, to listen for combinations that I like, combinations that I don't like, and try to eliminate those if that's the case. And also listen what kind of pacing is good for the piece. You know, now between 5 and 15 seconds that's quite a quick rate of changes. Maybe it could be between 30 and 60 seconds. I'm just using a short amount of time now to be able to more quickly show you guys what's going on. But something like this would be a starting point for patches for me, and then I would try to advance by adding material or adding more switching mechanisms to have it be even more interesting on a larger time scale. Oh, and I love when this happens. So now, just out of pure randomness, everything went silent and the music gets to breathe, and now it starts again. So don't be afraid for adding some silence into your pieces, especially really erratic pieces like this. I think silence actually helps a lot, letting the music breathe. So at this point, if I was gonna make this into a piece, I would probably introduce the preset manager where I can store settings of a patch. So what we've got now, if I store that into slot 1 like this, I can always recall that at a later stage. I will introduce the parameter nudge module to look for interesting combinations. The parameter nudge module is funny because, well, you can give all the parameters in the patch a new random value, but you can set the limitations of this randomness with this slider here. So if you put it at a high number like a 96 or over 100 and click the button, the patch is going to sound completely different. You know, and I'm not particularly pleased with this, so I'm going to go back to our saved patch. Or perhaps it's more useful if we put the param nudge at a lower number, like let's say 5 or 10, 7. We get like a variations of the patterns instead. So let's see, I'm going to click it now, click it again, click it till we have something cool. Increase to 17. Woo. Okay, here we go. That's cool. I'm going to store this in slot 2 because I kind of like it. go back to the first scene again. So now we have two interesting sound worlds, but the same exact module, the same exact signal flow, but we're taking advantage of the parameter nudge and the preset manager and to find new combinations with the material we already got, which is a good technique. So you don't have to build these patches ridiculously large and all over the screen. It becomes really cluttered and hard to read. So there's still a lot of possibilities with just these modules that we already have now. And if I was to make this into a real piece, I would set up some network or system that would perform these switches on the preset manager dynamically, so the patch itself would do it, so I don't have to click it. But I don't have time for that now, I think. Well, that's where I would go forward with this piece. Okay. Let's see how much time we have. I think that's about it. Let's see if I can find another cool combination. Yeah, if it becomes ridiculous, just go back to the first one and start over. Sometimes, like now, you might stumble across something cool. I like the acid line here, but the kick became kind of thin, so you can just go back to the kick and try and change it. Ooh, okay, like that. So let's say I'm kind of happy with this, and now store this. We have three presets that we can look at. This is our third one. Our first one. And our second one. Okay, great. I think that's it for me. Hope somebody finds this useful, and thank you so much. Bye bye.